Hi BookTube, it's Amy. I'm back again with another segment of my 2024 bookshelf tour. And we're starting today with the shelf of illustrated books and some J.M. Barrie. So we'll start on the end here where we have a copy of Arthur Rackham's book of pictures. Arthur Rackham was a 20th century author known for his children's books, but he was also known for his illustrations. And he did a very, very well-known illustrated edition of Peter Pan. The first edition actually had the illustrations by Arthur Rackham, Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens. But this is just a collection of some of his more well-known illustrations done over the course of his illustrating career. And according to the note in the front when I purchased it, it says there are 50 tipped-in plates, but upon further inspection, there's only 45 tipped-in plates. So I think I may be missing 5 plates. Either that or the bookseller was incorrect with the number of plates that are supposed to be in here. I've not come across a description of that book with the quote points, points being the things that you're supposed to be able to observe in a proper edition of the book. But that was one of my purchases from the Antiquarian Book Fair in Toronto in 2022. And, I saw in the description there were supposed to be 50 tipped-in plates. Counted them, there's 45. Doesn't really, disappoint me too much. I'm still absolutely delighted in the purchase. I do love the illustrations of Arthur Rackham. But Arthur Rackham is second to Hugh Thompson in my mind. I prefer the illustrations of Hugh Thompson. And Hugh Thompson also did some illustrations for J.M. Barrie's editions, particularly for some of his plays. And so I have here a biography of Hugh Thompson, his art, his letters, and his charm by Spielman and Walter Gerald. And this is an early 20th century biography. They've reproduced some of his wonderful images. And I'm trying to be able to show you these books up here. But this is from 1931. So this biography was written pretty much, shortly after he had passed. So I think that speaks to just how well known and respected he was in his day, that somebody published a biography of him so soon after his death, or at all. But there is, next to this, a book titled The Heroine in Bronze by James Lane Allen. This one I've not read yet. It is not illustrated by Hugh Thompson, but it is by James Lane Allen, and Hugh Thompson had illustrated one of his other books, Kentucky Cardinal and the Aftermath. And so, as I said, I've not read this one yet, but I got into James Lane Allen because of this book here, A Kentucky Cardinal and the Aftermath, which is illustrated by Hugh Thompson, and it's absolutely beautiful. Hugh Thompson's illustrated books tend to have these gold cloth covers, these very intricate designs. And this is a fun novel about a man who really loves looking at birds, and he falls in love with one of his neighbors. But she wants him to prove his love, and this is from 1909. She wants him to prove his love, and so she asks him to kill a bird, a Kentucky cardinal, I believe it is. And he's torn over what to do, his love of birds or his love of her. And it's got these wonderful illustrations throughout. And because I've started to collect Hugh Thompson's illustrations, I also purchased The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith, illustrated by Hugh Thompson. Once again, we have this beautiful, beautiful cloth cover with gold, florals and nature imagery. He really seems to love the nature imagery. A lot of his images include flowers and birds. You know, we've got birds here, we've got birds. It makes sense to have a bird on the Kentucky Cardinal. But as you can see, there's another bird there. Lovely book plate from a previous owner in the front of this one. Little bit of foxing, published in 1890, but the illustrations are absolutely beautiful, and this stylized writing is also kind of characteristic of Hugh Thompson illustrated books. Beautifully illustrated throughout. Next to this is a copy of the English Illustrated Magazine from 1884, and I'm not going to take it off the shelf because the text block is kind of loose in the binding, and it does sort of shed little bits of paper all over. But I have this because there are some illustrations by Hugh Thompson in this annual publication of the magazine issues. And then we're sort of transitioning from that Hugh Thompson into the J.M. Barrie. The Thompson is beside the J.M. Barrie because of that connection between Thompson and his illustrated editions and Barrie's works. So we have Stevenson and Barrie, A Friendship in Letters, which is a collection of the correspondence between Robert Louis Stevenson and J.M. Barrie. Both of them Scottish authors. And this one was published in just the last couple of years in 2020. And before this, I don't think you were able to purchase a collection of their correspondence. Next to this is a book by J.M. Barrie. I think I managed to pick this up for the low price of $12, but it's Speeches by J.M. Barrie. It's got a preface by Hugh Whipple, published 1938, and it is a collection of the various speeches and the various remarks that he was asked to give in his life. Next to that is Barrie, The Story of a Genius by J.A. Hamerton, which is a biography of J.M. Barrie. Some battered red cloth here. We've got an inscription from December of 29. There is Barrie in what looks to be some sort of fishing hat in 1921. And this is from September of 1929. So this is published not too long after his death. Then we have a collection of the letters of J.M. Barrie. There isn't really any duplication between this earlier volume and the letters between Stevenson and Barrie. There, I think, are a couple of Barrie's letters to Stevenson, but in this volume we get both of their correspondence, their replies to each other. There's a beautiful book plate in the front of this one. First published 1942, and it's just a collection of his letters. Next to this, we have what I believe is a first edition of J.M. Barrie's very first novel, titled Better Dead, which was a bit of a dud. He was not famous at that point. I don't believe it really sold very well. My copy is a library discard. But it's this kind of strange, disturbing novel about somebody who is preparing to commit a crime, and there's a secret society involved, and it's all just a little odd. And honestly, I would not recommend it unless you are really wanting to read everything that J.M. Barrie has ever written. Next to that is a little volume titled J.M. Barrie and the Theatre. It's a little work by H.M. Walbrook, specifically about J.M. Barrie's plays, and it's kind of a miniature biographical work about his theatre career, going through every play of his in chronological order. And next to that is this little volume of the plays of J.M. Barrie. Specifically in this one is The Admirable Crichton, published by Hodder and Stoughton. And if I so chose, I could collect the full set of these editions of J.M. Barrie's plays. I purchased one just to see if I liked the book. We have a ribbon bookmark here that's barely hanging on. The book is from 1929. The play itself was first printed in 1918, and that is one of my favorite plays from Barrie. But I haven't chosen to purchase any more of those because I do have this kind of omnibus collection of the plays of J.M. Barrie with all his plays in it. Next to this is this beautiful, and I admit I ordered this edition because of how stunning the binding was, but it's Odd Looked Idols, one of J.M. Barrie's shorter, I guess I would say, Scotland-centered works. He uses a Scottish dialect throughout the book, talking about the village of Thrums, and it is closely associated with this work titled Window in Thrums, and got a stray hairbrush there. Window in Thrums, that I have here in red cloth, and that is one of two editions I own. There's this little blue cloth bound edition as well, with the silver ribbons forming a fan, but I think it was wet at some point because the cloth is just kind of discolored, almost as though the color has run, and it's not coming off, but it almost feels chalky, but nothing transfers. It's just kind of an odd feeling book. I have this, and that's not in great condition. As you can see, it's been impacted by moisture. But that's what it is. It is what it is. But this is a copy of Peter Pan and Wendy and Margaret Ogilvy. And the real draw here is the fact that this is an early edition of Peter Pan. Peter Pan and Wendy and Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens are obviously J.M. Barrie's most well-known works, and they're the most expensive ones. When it comes to Peter Pan and Wendy, the Peter Pan story that we know, whether it's the novel or the play, because there's actually two separate versions of it. There's the novel version and there's the play version. Both of those are quite expensive to purchase, and so I don't have any early edition other than this from 1916. So we already looked briefly at the plays of J.M. Barrie, but I'll just open it up for you here. This is from 1933, and it's got this really thin paper making it compact. It begins with Peter Pan and includes, I think, every last play that J.M. Barrie ever wrote. Then we have The Greenwood Hat, published by Peter Davies. Interesting little book plate here. And this is J.M. Barrie's memoir of sorts. He was quite a character, quite humorous, and he seemed to like to play some games with the media and pretend to write anonymous works when everyone knew very well who he was. But that's a good one. Next to this, we have The Little White Bird, which is actually the first work where the character of Peter Pan appears. And I wouldn't call it a children's book. Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens is kind of an interlude, a story that he tells to a young boy that he's met. And so we have here 1902 edition. And I'll just show you the frontispiece here, showing the child's map of Kensington Garden. And it's a little bit of a strange story. Our main character is a bachelor who becomes a little bit obsessed with a couple, particularly a woman that he sees on the street, and ends up being a part of their lives, particularly a part of the life of the son who is born to this couple. Next to that is 2 copies of The Little Minister by J.M. Barrie, which is about a very young minister in a rural community who falls in love with a woman who is known in their community as a gypsy, someone who doesn't perhaps have the best reputation, but he falls in love with her anyway. This green cloth edition has the Scottish thistle all over the front of it. And this one was sent to me as a gift by someone here on BookTube several years ago. This is the 1891 edition. But my first edition is actually this blue cloth edition. And this is the book that I found kind of by chance in the basement stacks of Black Squirrel Books here in Ottawa. This is also an 1891 edition. But prior to my coming across this copy, I had no idea that J.M. Barrie had written novels for adults, or had written anything really, apart from Peter Pan, which he was known for. And so The Little Minister led me to finding other works by him, including Sentimental Tommy. Lovely brown cloth edition here. And this is the story of 2 young siblings whose mother dies at a young age, and they are sent to a Scottish community in rural Scotland. They're sent to a community in rural Scotland where their mother grew up. And it's all about the adventures of Tommy, the brother, and his sister Grizel. Published in 1896, but this is the 1897 edition. And this one is really good. The sequel, titled Tommy and Grizel, published a few years later, is it's okay, but I didn't like it as much. This edition is from 1900. I didn't like it nearly as much. Tommy and Grizel are adults in the second book, and Tommy has a somewhat disastrous romantic life that we follow. Then we have the Hugh Thompson illustrated plays. You'll see here 2 copies of Quality Street and 2 copies of The Admirable Crichton. There is a large edition and a small edition. Obviously, the large edition would have been the more expensive version, but both of them would have been released, I think, in the same year. This would have been for, I guess, more the average book buyer. The dust jacket is missing here, as you would expect from a book that is over 100 years old. Lovely illustrations by Hugh Thompson. And the plates in here are tipped in. When I purchased this book secondhand, I had to reattach some of the plates that were loose. And as you might expect, it's not uncommon to find copies of this with some of the color plates missing, simply because they're tipped in. This one's actually loose. I don't think I ever reattached that one. I just tucked it in. But they either fall out or a young reader finds them so beautiful that they are cut out and framed. And I've seen it in bookstalls and bookstores myself, where they are selling the Hugh Thompson illustrations that have been removed from books individually, and they can sell them for, $15 to $20 each, which when you take them all out individually, that's more than they would be likely to get for the book itself. And then they seem to be trying to sell the book itself as well. Here is the larger format, and it's a little bit faded, but it would have been a somewhat more vivid purple when it was first published. But it's the exact same illustrations, just in a larger format. This one, quite affected by foxing, but absolutely lovely here. This is also the large format. You'll see this one is a library discard. I love the red and the gold together on this one. Quality Street is about a woman who pretends to be her own cousin, I believe, and pretends to be younger than she is, to try to win over the heart of a man that she was once in love with, who she thinks is not in love with her because of her age. And the Admiral Crichton is about a family who is shipwrecked. And the aristocratic family ends up essentially becoming the servants, and the butler and the maid essentially end up becoming the leaders of the group, because they're the ones who know how to do things. And so it's like a switch of social roles, and the daughter of the family is in love with the butler, and they're on this shipwrecked on this island, and it's this humorous look at social roles. And this is just the smaller format of that. It's in blue. I'm not sure why they decided the big one would be red and the little one would be blue. Maybe it's just they always did these smaller editions in blue. But once again, all the same illustrations, everything just in a smaller format. And next to that, we have two matching J.M. Barrie editions with Scottish Thistle, one titled When a Man's Single, which is a collection of essays, and one titled My Lady Nicotine and Margaret Ogilvy. Margaret Ogilvy was J.M. Barrie's mother, and the work in here is quite a moving tribute to her. These are both from 1922, and if I so chose, I could collect the full set of J.M. Barrie's works in these. I guess I would call them greenish-brown editions. They're almost yellow, but it's hard to tell what they were meant to be at first. I think they were green before sun and age affected them. Next to that is a book titled Echoes of the War, which is a collection of short stories related to the First World War. Some of them are a little spooky, some of them are a little sad. They're not lighthearted in any way. Published in 1919. A Well-Remembered Voice. I think that's the one where a son has passed and the father, either the father or the mother, is hearing their son's voice. This is just another copy of Margaret Ogilvy, that work about J.M. Barrie's mother. And this one is from 1897, so it is older than the other edition there. Then we have a more recent work. This is the annotated Peter Pan, the Centennial Edition, edited by Maria Tatar. And there's all sorts of good stuff in there if you're, interested in Peter Pan. And then I have the Folio Society facsimile reproduction of Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens with the Arthur Rackham illustrations. And, oops, there's some dust on there. I really need to take the duster to these shelves. But I'll just pull this out so you can see a little bit. So it's green cloth, red writing, wonderful, wonderful edition. And if you're interested in seeing a closer look at some of these J.M. Barrie editions, I do have a number of videos here on the channel specifically looking at these books in closer detail. So I think we'll stop there for today. Next time we'll take a look at the Newton shelf, and there's some really good stuff there.